the Mandela Effect. Why do millions remember things that never happened? What if one of your strongest memories is completely wrong? Not a blurry childhood moment. Not something you're unsure about. A memory you would swear is true. A movie quote you've heard your entire life. A logo you've seen hundreds of times. A cartoon character you grew up with. Then one day, you look it up, and reality disagrees. The quote was never said that way. The logo never looked like that. The character never had that feature. And somehow, thousands of other people remember the exact same thing. How is that possible? That mystery is known as the Mandela Effect, and depending on who you ask, it is either one of the strangest quirks of human psychology, or evidence that reality itself may not be as stable as we think. The name comes from one of the most famous examples, Nelson Mandela. Many people vividly remember hearing that Mandela died in prison during the 1980s. Some remember news broadcasts, others remember discussing it with friends or family. Some even claim they remember seeing footage of his funeral. There's just one problem. None of that happened. Mandela was released from prison in 1990. He later became president of South Africa, and he lived until 2013. So how could so many people remember the same event incorrectly? At first, this sounds like a simple mistake. People misremember things all the time. But the deeper you look, the stranger it becomes. Because the Mandela Effect isn't just about being wrong. It's about being wrong in exactly the same way as thousands of strangers. And once you start looking at the examples, it becomes difficult to stop. Take the Berenstain Bears. Millions of children grew up reading the books. Yet a surprising number of adults insist the name was Berenstain Bears, not Berenstain. Many people remember seeing it that way, pronouncing it that way, reading it that way. But every official copy says Berenstain. And according to the historical record, it always has. Then there's Star Wars. Ask almost anyone to quote Darth Vader's most famous line, and they'll say, "Luke, I am your father." Except that's not the line. In the movie, Vader actually says, "No, I am your father." The word Luke was never part of it. Yet the incorrect version became so famous that many people are shocked when they watch the scene again. Then there's the Monopoly Man. Picture him in your mind. Top hat, mustache, suit, maybe a cane. Now ask yourself, does he have a monocle? A huge number of people say yes. They can picture it perfectly, but the Monopoly Man has never worn a monocle. Not in the original game, not in the official artwork. Never. Another famous example involves the Fruit of the Loom logo. Many people remember fruit spilling out of a cornucopia. Some even claim they learned what a cornucopia was because of the logo. Yet according to Fruit of the Loom, there was never a cornucopia, just fruit. No basket, no horn, nothing. And that's what makes these examples so unsettling. Not that people are wrong, but that they feel so certain. Most mistakes don't survive scrutiny. These do, because they don't feel like guesses. They feel like memories. So what's actually happening? The scientific explanation is surprisingly simple. Human memory is not a recording device. It never was. We tend to imagine memory as a video archive stored inside the brain, something we can replay whenever we need it. But neuroscience suggests something very different. Every time you remember an event, your brain rebuilds it. It takes fragments of information and reconstructs the experience. And during that reconstruction process, details can change. Information can be added. Details can disappear. Assumptions can sneak in unnoticed. In other words, memory is less like opening a file and more like rewriting a story. And sometimes the rewritten version becomes stronger than the original. Consider the Monopoly Man. If you think about wealthy cartoon characters from the early 1900s, certain features come to mind. Top hat, suit cane, monocle. The monocle simply feels like it belongs, so the brain adds it. The same thing may happen with Pikachu. Many people remember Pikachu having a black tip on his tail, but he doesn't. His ears have black tips, his tail does not. The brain notices a pattern and unconsciously completes it. The result feels completely natural. Even when it's wrong, the same principle may explain Berenstain Bears. The ending "steen" is far more common than "stain." When children encountered the unfamiliar spelling, their brains may have quietly corrected it. Years later, the correction became the memory. From this perspective, the Mandela Effect isn't evidence that reality changed. It's evidence that memory is creative and incredibly convincing. But not everyone accepts that explanation. Some people believe the Mandela Effect points to something much stranger. One popular theory involves parallel universes. The idea is simple. If multiple realities exist, perhaps small differences exist between them. In one universe, the books were called Berenstain Bears. In another, they were Berenstain Bears. In one reality, the Monopoly man wore a monocle. In another, he didn't. According to this theory, Mandela effects occur when people somehow retain memories from a different timeline. Maybe realities overlap, maybe consciousness shifts, maybe histories merge. There is no scientific evidence supporting this idea. But it remains popular because it explains something psychology struggles with emotionally. Why false memories can feel so real. Another theory comes from simulation theory. The proposal is that reality may be an advanced simulation. If that's true, Mandela effects could be interpreted as glitches. Updates, edits, changes to the code. Perhaps reality was altered, but some memories weren't fully updated. Again, there is no evidence this is actually happening. But the idea resonates because it mirrors the experience itself. You remember something one way. The evidence says it was always another way. It feels like reality changed even when it probably didn't. And maybe that's why the Mandela Effect has become such a cultural phenomenon, not because it proves alternate dimensions, not because it proves we're living in a simulation, but because it forces us to confront something deeply uncomfortable. Our memories are not as reliable as we think. Most of us build our identities around memory, our childhood, our relationships, our successes, our failures, our understanding of the world. Memory is the foundation of who we are. So when something as simple as a movie quote or a logo suddenly turns out to be wrong, it creates a much bigger question. If I can be wrong about that, what else am I wrong about? Think about arguments between friends. Two people can experience the same conversation and remember it completely differently. Both feel certain. Both are convinced. Both may honestly believe they're telling the truth. Now, imagine that happening across entire populations. That's the real mystery behind the Mandela Effect. Not whether reality changed, but how easily human beings can arrive at the same false conclusion. Because in many cases, the incorrect version actually makes more sense than the truth. The Monopoly man looks like he should have a monocle. Pikachu's tail looks like it should have a black tip. Berenstain sounds more familiar than Berenstain. Luke, I am your father, sounds better out of context than the actual line. The brain prefers patterns. The brain prefers familiarity. The brain prefers stories that make sense. And sometimes those stories become stronger than reality itself. Maybe that's the secret behind the Mandela Effect. Not that we're remembering another universe, but that human minds are built in remarkably similar ways. When faced with ambiguity, we often make the same assumptions. We fill in the same gaps. We create the same mistakes. And then we remember those mistakes as truth. Yet, Despite all the scientific explanations, something about the Mandela effect continues to bother people, because every so often, you'll encounter an example that makes you pause. An example you were absolutely certain about. An example that feels impossible to explain away. And, for a moment, you experience a strange feeling. A feeling that reality is slipping. A feeling that reality is slipping. A feeling that the past isn't quite as fixed as you thought. A feeling that maybe your memory is telling you one story while the world tells another. That's why the Mandela effect refuses to disappear, because at its core, it isn't really about logos, or movie quotes, or cartoon characters. It's about trust. Trust in your own mind. Trust in your memories. Trust in your understanding of reality. And once that trust is shaken, even slightly, it's hard to put it back together. So the next time you discover one of these examples, pay attention to your reaction. Look at the evidence. Compare it to your memory. Ask yourself a simple question. Do I remember the original, or do I remember remembering it? Because there may be no better reminder of how strange the human mind truly is. The Mandela effect may not prove alternate realities. It may not prove timeline shifts. It may not prove we're living in a simulation. But it does prove something fascinating. A memory can be completely wrong and still feel absolutely real. And maybe that's the most unsettling mystery of all, because if the Mandela effect is just memory, then the mystery isn't out there, it's inside us. If this story left you questioning what you remember, you're not alone. And if you've experienced a Mandela effect that still bothers you, leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Until next time, keep questioning, keep looking closer. And remember, sometimes the strangest mysteries aren't hiding in the dark. They're already inside your mind. This is Static in the Dark. Good night.